1971. A dark road between Vitebsk and Polotsk, Soviet Belarus. A young man sits alone in the darkness. He is 24 years old. He has just returned from 6 years of military service, and in his hands he holds a rope. He is going to hang himself. For 6 years he served his country, and for 6 years his girlfriend waited, or so he thought. While he was gone, she married another man. The rejection broke something inside him. Deep depression, suicidal thoughts, a darkness that wouldn't lift. And now, on this empty road, he has made his decision. Tonight it ends. But then he sees her, a young woman walking alone on the road, vulnerable, unprotected. And in that moment, a thought enters his mind, a thought that will change everything. Why should I throttle myself because of a woman? Better throttle some woman myself. Why should I kill myself? A woman caused my misery. Let me kill a woman instead. His name was Gennady Modestovich Mikhasevich, and over the next 14 years he would murder at least 36 women, while Soviet police tortured confessions out of 14 innocent men, while at least one innocent man was executed, while another went blind in prison. The real killer walked free, got married, had children, lived a normal life, and kept killing. This is the story of the Vitebsk Strangler, the serial killer the Soviet system refused to believe existed. The monster who murdered for 14 years while innocent men paid for his crimes, and the massive handwriting dragnet that finally ended his reign of terror. Before we continue, if stories like this fascinate you and terrify you, make sure you're subscribed to Red Archive and have notifications turned on. And I want to hear from you in the comments. Tell me what city you're from and what serial killer cases or unsolved murders are known in your area. Your suggestions have shaped some of our best documentaries. Now, let's go back to where this monster was made. April 7th, 1947. A boy is born in the village of Vitebsk region, Soviet Belarus, just 2 years after the end of World War II. His name is Gennady. His father is Modest, a simple worker, probably on a collective farm. His mother raises him in the typical Soviet way. The childhood records are sparse. Like most Soviet citizens, his early life was documented only in fragments. But what we know paints a picture of quiet, unremarkable beginnings. He attended Soviet schools, joined the Young Pioneers, the Komsomol, learned the ideology of communism, that crime was a product of capitalism, that the Soviet Union had eliminated the conditions that created criminals. He would later prove that ideology catastrophically wrong. In the early 1960s, Gennady enrolled in a technical school in Vitebsk, industrial training, mechanical work, skills that would serve him well in Soviet society. He was quiet, introverted, possibly isolated from his peers. No major incidents documented, no warning signs that anyone recorded, just another young Soviet man preparing for his mandatory service. In 1965, at age 18, Gennady Mikhasevich was conscripted into the Soviet army. He would serve for 6 years. 6 years of harsh military discipline, 6 years of exposure to violence, 6 years of learning how to hurt, how to control, how to dominate. The Soviet military was brutal. Hazing was endemic, a practice called dedovshchina. Older soldiers tormented younger ones. Violence was normalized. Obedience was absolute. Somewhere in those 6 years, the man who would become the Vitebsk Strangler was forged. But the final ingredient, the spark that would ignite the killing, came from something far more personal. Before he left for the military, Gennady had a girlfriend. We don't know her name, but we know she mattered to him. Perhaps she was the only thing that mattered. For 6 years he thought of her. For 6 years he believed she was waiting. For 6 years she was his anchor to a normal life. But when he returned in 1971, she was gone, married to another man. The rejection shattered him. Depression, deep and consuming. Suicidal thoughts, constant and overwhelming. A rage that had no outlet. A pain that had no cure. In Soviet society, there was no therapy, no counseling, no mental health support. You suffered in silence, or you didn't suffer at all. Gennady chose a third option. He would make someone else suffer instead. The night is dark. The road stretches between Vitebsk and Polotsk. Empty, isolated, perfect for what is about to happen. Gennady Mikhasevich sits by the roadside. The rope is in his hands. The decision has been made. He missed the last bus home. He has nowhere to go, and he doesn't want to go anywhere. He wants it to end. And then she appears. Her name is Ludmila. We don't know her last name. We don't know where she was going. We only know that she was young, probably in her 20s, and that she was walking alone. Why should I throttle myself because of a woman? The thought crystallizes. The depression transforms. The suicidal urge converts into something else, something predatory. He approaches her. Perhaps he offers help. Perhaps he asks for directions. Perhaps he simply attacks. The assault is sudden, violent, sexual. He rapes her, and then he strangles her with his bare hands. When it's over, he stands above her body, and for the first time in months, the depression lifts. After the murder, there was no trace of my former sorrow. Analytical. Something fundamental changed in that moment. The murder didn't just relieve his depression, it rewired his brain. Psychologists call this murder as mood regulation. The killing became his antidepressant, his therapy, his cure. But like any drug, the effect wore off, and when the depression returned, he would need another fix. After killing Ludmila, he bound her hands with cord, dragged her body to a secluded location, covered her with branches and leaves. He took her personal belongings, threw her bags in the river, and removed her shoes. The shoes. This would become his signature. Every victim, for 14 years, he would remove their shoes. No one knows why. Perhaps he didn't know himself. It was compulsive, ritualistic, unexplainable. Then he went home, returned to his normal life, and waited for the depression to return, for the hunger to build, for the next victim to appear. The first year was prolific. After Ludmila in May, there was a second victim in the fall of 1971. Details are scarce. Soviet records were not designed to track serial killers. In October, he attempted another murder. But the woman screamed. Witnesses appeared. He fled. She survived. He was learning to be faster, learning to be quieter, learning to select victims who couldn't fight back. July 30th, 1972.
Another body is found. This time, a witness comes forward. She saw 3 young men near the crime scene with a German Shepherd dog. The police had a lead, and they pursued it with devastating incompetence. They launched a dragnet, arrested every man in Vitebsk who owned a German Shepherd. 3 men fell into their trap: Val Kovalyev, Nikolai Yanchenko, and V. Vadir Pasic. None of them had anything to do with the murders, but that didn't matter to investigator Zhevnirovich. The interrogations began. Beatings, threats of execution, sleep deprivation, psychological torture. One by one, the innocent men broke. Kovalyev confessed. He received 15 years in prison. Yanchenko confessed, 2.5 years. Pasic refused to confess. Even under torture, he maintained his innocence. He received 12 years anyway. 3 innocent men, tortured into confession, imprisoned for crimes they didn't commit, while the real killer walked free. This was just the beginning. While innocent men rotted in prison, Mikhasevich refined his technique. He stopped using just his bare hands, too physical, too time-consuming. Instead, he developed a preference for garottes, belts, ropes, scarves, strips of cloth, anything that could be wrapped around a neck, tightened, and held until the struggling stopped. His ritual behaviors solidified. He always removed the victim's shoes, always, even when there was no practical reason, even when it made no sense. He covered the bodies, grass, moss, twigs, leaves, a strange attempt at concealment, or perhaps something more ritualistic. He gagged his victims with their own clothing, silencing them, controlling them, even in death. And he grew faster. What once took time now took minutes. Attack, rape, strangle, conceal, disappear. By 1973, he was a practiced killer, working a job, living a normal life, and murdering women whenever the darkness returned. In 1976, Gennady Mikhasevich got married. Think about that for a moment. A man who had already murdered at least 10 women, who was actively hunting for more victims, who strangled women and removed their shoes as a ritual. That man stood at an altar, said his vows, started a family. His wife's name is not widely documented. She had no idea who she was marrying. She saw what everyone saw: a quiet, respectable Soviet worker, a little introverted perhaps, but fundamentally normal. They would have 2 children together. He would come home to dinner, play with his kids, sleep beside his wife. And then he would go out, find a woman walking alone, and kill her. This is the phenomenon psychologists call compartmentalization, the ability to keep 2 completely separate identities: family man and serial killer, husband and strangler. He showed no guilt, no internal conflict, no sign that the contradiction bothered him at all. In 1976 alone, while newly married, he murdered an estimated 4 women. His wife never suspected a thing. 1977, more murders. 1978, more murders. 1979, more murders. 1980, more murders. The geography expanded. Vitebsk, Novopolotsk, roads between towns. He was growing bolder, hunting across a wider territory. And still, the police saw nothing. Each region investigated its own murders. No one connected the cases. no one recognized the pattern. A strangled woman in Vitebsk, a strangled woman in Polotsk. Two separate investigations, two separate dead ends. The Soviet system had no mechanism for recognizing serial killers, because officially, serial killers didn't exist in the Soviet Union. That was a Western problem, a capitalist disease. And so the bodies piled up, and the killer remained invisible. In 1981, everything changed. Gennady Mikhasevich bought a car, a red ZAZ Zaporozhets, a small Soviet compact car, distinctive, memorable, rare enough to stand out. In the Soviet Union, owning a personal car was a status symbol. Most people rode buses, walked, relied on public transport. Having your own vehicle meant freedom, mobility. For Mikhasevich, it meant something else entirely. Before the car,
He could only attack women he encountered by chance, walking the same roads, waiting for opportunity. After the car, he could hunt. He could patrol different areas, approach women on the roadside, offer them rides. Where are you going? Let me help you. Seem friendly, helpful, safe. Then drive them to isolated locations and do what he always did. Witnesses started noticing something, a red car near crime scenes, again and again. But the police didn't connect the dots. The murders were still investigated separately. The red car was just one detail among thousands, and Mikhasevich kept killing, more efficiently than ever. 1981, 3 confirmed murders. 1982, 5 confirmed murders. 1983, a brief lull, 1 murder. And then, 1984, 12 murders in a single year. 1 murder nearly every month, sometimes more. January 13th, a student named Tatyana Katuyev found near a railroad embankment, strangled, the familiar ritual marks. Her death became a symbol of the terror spreading through Vitebsk. Women were afraid to leave their homes alone. The police flooded the streets, visible but ineffective. Rewards were offered. The press reported on the mysterious killer, but still they couldn't find him. How was this possible? He was seen. The red car was reported again and again. Witnesses described a man, tall, middle-aged, driving a distinctive vehicle. But there was no national database, no computerized cross-referencing, no way to connect the sightings across regions. And the ideology said serial killers didn't exist. So the police kept looking for individual murderers, not one monster responsible for everything. By the end of 1984, Gennady Mikhasevich had murdered at least 33 women. He had been married for 8 years. His children were growing up. His community respected him. And he was just getting started. We're about to enter the final chapter of this nightmare, the capture, the revelation, the reckoning. But first, I want to know what you're thinking. You leave a comment. How did the Soviet system fail so completely? Was it the ideology that said serial killers couldn't exist? The fragmented police system? Or something deeper in how the society was structured? Your insights often reveal angles I hadn't considered. Now, let's continue to the end. 1985. September 5th. A woman is murdered in Gelovshina, near Polotsk. The same pattern, strangulation, ritual behaviors, another unsolved case. And then, October 27th, his final murder. In the village of Derevnya Pavlovichka, he picked her up in the red car. drove her to a secluded location, strangled her with her own scarf, raped her dead body, removed her shoes, covered her with leaves and branches. But this time, he did something different. He left a note in her mouth. For betrayal, death. Death to communists and their henchmen, patriots of Vitebsk. He signed it, Patriots of Vitebsk, a fictional organization, an attempt to make it look political. But this note, this single piece of paper, would be his undoing. When police found the body, they initially believed the note a political extremist group, anti-communist terrorists, a new threat to Soviet security. The KGB was notified. Resources were deployed. The hunt for patriots of Vitebsk began. But then someone made a connection. Years earlier, Mikhasevich had written anonymous letters to a local newspaper called Vitebsk Worker. Letters about the murders, perhaps boastful, perhaps seeking attention. The narcissistic need to take credit for his work. The newspaper had kept those letters, and when investigators compared the handwriting, the note in the victim's mouth, the letters to the newspaper, they matched. The same person who wrote to the newspaper years ago had just killed a woman and left a note in her mouth. This wasn't a political organization. This was one man, and he had left a trail of his own handwriting. Act 7. The Handwriting Dragnet. The investigation shifted focus. If the killer's handwriting was known, then every man in the region could be checked. What followed was one of the largest forensic operations in Soviet history. 556,000 handwriting samples collected from men across the Vitebsk region, from workplaces, from militia offices, from Communist Party headquarters. Every sample compared to the note, every man scrutinized. It was painstaking work, months of analysis, thousands of hours of comparison. But slowly, the net tightened. Investigators also worked other angles. The red car, cross-referenced with handwriting suspects. Who owned a red Zaz and matched the writing? The geographic pattern. Who lived in the areas where the murders occurred? The timeline. Who was present in all the right places at all the right times? Everything pointed in one direction. A married man with 2 children, a respected worker, a member of the Communist Party, a man named Gennady Modestovich Mikhasevich. Late November 1985. The evidence was overwhelming. His handwriting matched the note. He owned a red Zaz Zaporozhets. He lived and worked in the murder zones. His movements correlated with the timeline of killings. But the investigators wanted to be certain. They gathered their evidence, prepared their warrants, and on December 11th, 1985, they moved. December 11th, 1985. Multiple KGB and militia officers arrive at a modest home in the Vitebsk area. Inside, a man sits with his wife and children. A normal family scene, a father home from work, a husband beside his wife. They knock on the door. Gennady Mikhasevich opens it and sees what he has known for 14 years might someday come. The police have finally found him. He doesn't resist, doesn't try to run, doesn't deny anything. He goes with them quietly, while his wife watches in shock, while his children don't understand, while his entire double life collapses in an instant. The search of his home revealed everything. Personal items from victims, rings, bracelets, earrings, watches, collected like trophies.
clothing from the murdered women, scarves, pieces of fabric, underwear, and shoes. Shoes from victim after victim. The compulsive ritual made material. Proof of 36 deaths kept in his home. His wife saw it all. The woman who had shared his bed for 11 years, the mother of his children. She saw the evidence of who he really was. We don't know what she said.
We don't know if she screamed or collapsed or went silent. We only know that in that moment her entire life became a lie. In the interrogation room, Mikhasevich didn't play games. He confessed immediately, fully, proudly. He told them about 43 murders, not 36, 43. 7 more than the police had confirmed. Bodies never found, victims never identified. He described the methods, the strangulation techniques he had refined, the ritual behaviors he couldn't explain, the way the killing made him feel. I derived special pleasure from the victim's attempts to resist and scratch me. He was matter-of-fact. No remorse, no guilt, just narcissistic satisfaction that his work was finally being recognized. He seemed more interested in how he was caught than in the lives he had destroyed. Now comes the part of this story that haunts me most. While Gennady Mikhasevich murdered freely for 14 years, 14 innocent men were convicted of his crimes. The Soviet system needed someone to blame, and when they couldn't find the real killer, they created fake ones. Remember the German Shepherd investigation in 1972? Val Kovalev, arrested because he owned a dog, beaten by investigator Zhevnerovich, threatened with execution, tortured until he confessed to a murder he didn't commit. He spent 15 years in Soviet prison for nothing. Nikolai Yanchenko, same story, tortured, broken, forced to confess, 2.5 years of his life stolen. V. Vadir Pasic, the one who refused to break. Even under the worst torture, he maintained his innocence. They convicted him anyway. 12 years in prison for a crime he didn't commit, because he was brave enough to tell the truth. One of the innocent men, his name is protected in some records, he was convicted for a murder Mikhasevich committed, sent to Soviet prison, and there something happened. The trauma, the torture, the conditions. He lost his sight. An innocent man, blinded, for a crime he had nothing to do with. And there was Nikolai Tereshchenko, convicted, sentenced to death, possibly executed before Mikhasevich was caught. An innocent man may have been killed while the real killer walked free. 14 men, tortured into confessions, imprisoned for crimes they didn't commit, some for years, some for decades, one possibly executed, one blinded, all because the Soviet system needed closed cases and would torture anyone to get them. And what happened to investigator Zhevnerovich, the man who tortured innocent people into false confessions? He was forced to retire. A 1987 amnesty law prevented his prosecution. He escaped justice entirely. The innocent men he tortured received official apologies, inadequate compensation, and lives that could never be restored. The trial was swift by Soviet standards. 1986, preparation. 1987, judgment. The evidence was overwhelming. 36 victims' belongings in his home, a full confession, handwriting match, witness descriptions. No one doubted his guilt. Psychiatric evaluations found him sane. No hallucinations, no delusions, no psychosis. Just a sociopath with complete control of his actions.
He knew what he was doing was wrong. He could have stopped at any time. He chose not to. The verdict was inevitable. Guilty of 36 counts of murder.
Sentenced to death by firing squad, September 25, 1987. Gennady Mikhasevich is led from his cell. He is 40 years old. The location is kept secret, probably Vitebsk. Soviet executions followed a protocol. The prisoner was blindfolded, forced to kneel or stand. A firing squad of 4 or 5 riflemen, a simultaneous volley. Death confirmed. Body disposed of, often in an unmarked grave. There is no record of his last words. The Soviet system didn't preserve such things. But there is also no record of remorse, no confession of guilt beyond the legal facts, no acknowledgement of the suffering he caused. He went to his death as he had lived his killing years, without conscience, without empathy, without humanity. The Vitebsk Strangler was dead, but the damage he left behind would last forever. 36 confirmed murders, possibly 43, maybe more. 14 years of terror. 14 innocent men imprisoned, at least 1 executed, 1 blinded, countless lives destroyed. And a system that refused to believe such evil could exist in their perfect communist society. The case of Gennady Mikhasevich became a symbol of everything wrong with the Soviet approach to justice. Ideology that blinded investigators to obvious patterns. Regional isolation that prevented coordination. Torture that manufactured false confessions. A press that wasn't allowed to warn the public. A society that suffered in silence. After his execution, reforms began slowly. Inter-regional police cooperation improved. The concept of serial killers was acknowledged. Training changed. But it was too late for the women he killed. Too late for the men he got imprisoned. Too late for the families who lost everything. His wife had to rebuild her life, knowing she had shared a bed with a monster for 11 years. His children grew up with the knowledge that their father was one of history's worst killers. And somewhere in Vitebsk, families still remember the daughters and sisters who never came home. Gennady Mikhasevich asked himself a question on that dark road in 1971. Why should I kill myself? A woman caused my misery. Let me kill a woman instead. For 14 years, he answered that question again and again. 36 times at minimum. Until a note in a victim's mouth and 556,000 handwriting samples finally brought the Vitebsk Strangler to justice. If you watched this entire documentary, thank you. This case took extensive research to piece together. Soviet records are incomplete, contradictory, sometimes deliberately hidden. But stories like this deserve to be told so that we understand what happens when systems fail and innocent people pay the price. Subscribe to Red Archive and hit the notification bell. Leave a like if this documentary taught you something you didn't know. And in the comments, tell me which Soviet or Russian serial killer I should cover next. Your suggestions shape this channel, and there are many more stories buried in the archives. Until next time, stay safe, stay vigilant, and remember, sometimes the monster looks exactly like everyone else.